Good morning, Gate City Rotary. How are we doing today? Good morning. Another beautiful day out there. Today the invocation is me. So, we're going to please bow your heads. Gracious Heavenly Father, thank you for the beautiful day. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of this group, to be part of something that's bigger than ourselves and anything that we can achieve individually. Keep us mindful of the blessings that we see, and especially those that we don't. Grace us food to the nourishment of our bodies. In His name we pray, amen. Stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For the things we think, say, and do.
Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Great. Rick in the house? All right, yep, sorry.
We got quite a few guests this morning. Howard, got a guest this morning?
I do. It's my daughter, Reagan, who is going to eat dinner, she's going to eat breakfast with us, maybe, and we're going to stay. And go and learn about science early. So, the absolute opposite of what I used to do in school. Get less of it. She's going to get more.
Gail,
Stand up with me. This is my dear friend and client Patience Ergish. She moved to Greensboro from Rocky Mount to be closer to her work and its development and prosperity. She falls under the heading of a female entrepreneur. I'm going to have her tell you a little bit about herself.
I'm going to just take a brief minute. I moved to Greensboro about a year and a half ago, and if anyone knows anything about women moving places, Gail was one of my first friends. She was my hairstylist, so that's really good. And while I've been here, I have really delved into my work, which I own a farm. I'm the third generation for this piece of property, and if anybody knows anything about farms, it's a great nonprofit. So anyway, my staff and I sat together about 12 years ago and said, okay, how can we continue to afford this farm? And it's a really pretty piece of property. It's up 29 toward Danville. And so we thought, maybe somebody would like to get married out here. So we've been in business as a wedding venue for 12 years. We average about 35 weddings a year. And anyway, like I said, the property was purchased in the 30s. All the buildings are sort of vintage looking. And you remember the tornado in 2018 that hit Greensboro so hard? Well, it landed on my property, and it closed me up for a year. And one of the things it really smushed was my reception barn. So I have rebuilt this barn. I now own the barn on steroids. It has heat and air. I imported wood from Montana to make it look old and rustic. And this year, for New Year's, I'm hosting a wonderful opportunity. It's a New Year's Eve gala. It will begin at 7:30 with an opening band of bluegrass music. I have put on your tables a little promo about the evening. We'll have a photo booth, plenty of drinks, and a reverse raffle. And then you thought Elvis was dead? Well, he lives at Oak Haven. And he's going to come and perform for us 2 sets, ringing the New Year's. And it's going to be a lot of fun with a champagne toast and fabulous breakfast. I hope it'll be as nice as what you're serving me this morning. So I want to invite everybody out to this opportunity. And it's on my website if you want information about the tickets. More brochures are out there. Don't sit in your easy chair. Come see me. I'm 35 minutes up 29. Thank you for inviting me to your meeting this morning.
Jim has a few guests.
Jim, do you want to introduce guests now?
We'll introduce them.
Okay, great. Later. That it?
That's it?
Okey doke. Is Rick Martin here? I haven't seen him. Anybody getting older today?
No, not today.
Good. What, is today your birthday, Jeff?
Just a day old.
Oh, just a day, just a day. Sorry, buddy, we're not gonna sing birthday, happy birthday every day. Getting old, much as we'd like to. Okey doke, let's see. I know we need some football pools.
Right here.
I'm sorry?
Football pool?
Yeah, go ahead.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Football pool. Well, you know we have the M&M Awards, right? So I've got one for Cheryl Cranberg. Where are you? Let's do it in a row. Yeah, you are. This is interesting. Cheryl last week got 11 wrong on the color side. Well, you got 12 this week, but they were right. Congratulations. Wow. Big turnaround. But the individual who didn't get that many right is Danielle. Woo! Oh, there you go. Winner. There's a great prize in here for you.
Oh, thank you.
There you go. We had a lot of people that had 18. Mike Conrad, James Pegram, David Wood, Matt Foster. Had 2 at 19 correct. One was Walt, and one was Cheryl. Wow. Cheryl just almost hit the ball on the front, but came up short to Dale Harold, who got 20. Where's Dale? There you are. Congratulations. You're done.
While you've got the floor, would you guys like to go ahead and do your presentation?
So every year we interview students at GTCC for scholarships that we provide. They're $500 scholarships, and there's 3 of them. Unfortunately, one of the students couldn't be here. They had a medical issue that came up, so they obviously could not attend. But we have 2 of the 3. Rich DePolk is head of the, is it the accounting?
Accounting, business, supply chain management.
There you go. You heard that? Supply chain management, accounting, and business administration. He's head of those departments. He coordinates all the students' applications and gets them to us, and then he sets up the screening process. And if anybody would like to join us next year, we'll do it about the same time around October. The intent is so that we can transfer the money so they can use the money for their next semester. The money does go directly to the school, not to the students, and it has a specific application to tuition, books, and fees. So the money is funded right there. But I'm going to have Rich introduce the students.
So our first recipient is Alexis Taylor.
Hi, my name is Lexi Taylor. I'm currently a part of the accounting diploma program at GTCC, and I'm aiming to sit for the CPA in the next few years. I speak on behalf of myself, and I'm sure the other recipients as well, when we say thank you for this opportunity to further our education and to advance and progress towards our career goals. Thank you for acknowledging my dedication to the program and affirming that my hard work is paying off. You've made me one step closer, and I'm so grateful to have you in my corner. Your work is inspiring not only locally with your service to UMC and Camp Carefree, among other projects, but also internationally as well in your collective chapters. I am so grateful, and I look forward to working with some of you in the future. Thank you.
recipient is Star Russell.
Hi there, my name is Star. Number one, I'm extremely honored to be receiving such a great benefit towards my education from you all. Been struggling a long time with managing a full-time workload while being a full-time student and still having time to dedicate back towards the community and then my family and such. I'll be graduating next fall with an associate's in business administration, and I plan to continue towards a bachelor's in the business management marketing field. I plan to go to Alabama, so this is definitely going to help me save tremendously for my future whenever I move and really finance towards my future education goals. It lifts an immediate weight off my shoulders. I mean, you have no idea how I've been struggling and praying for guidance from God and just helping hands, and then along came the scholarship, and it's just, it really touches me. And I wanted to thank each and every one of you, because you all have a part in it. Once again, I promise not to waste such a great opportunity you all have given me, and thank you for blessing me with this scholarship.
The third recipient is Danielle Daniels, and she did have a surgery this week, so she regrets that she couldn't be here, but she did want me to convey her appreciation for the scholarship and the fact that she's going to be using this to pay for books in the spring. I just wanted to say that they both said the same thing. A lot of our students don't finish not because of academic reasons, it's because of life happening. You know, we might not have experienced the same sort of things they do. Unexpected expenses, cars, family, adults. So it's a very non-traditional environment. This extra $500, $1,000, whatever they receive, can make the difference between completing that degree and not completing that degree. It's that tight. So every little bit that the community can help definitely makes a difference in their completion rate and their ability to move on with their career. So thank you very much for your continued support. And my annual shameless plug, if anybody wants to teach, I'm always looking, and we're looking now for the spring semester. So thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. This is a great example of why we have our fundraiser, why we have the President's Committee passing out grants, things like that. This is kind of directly helping funds within our community that come back to us in so many ways. Next week, the meeting is very low key. We are. It's all going to be at Chip's house. He'll have the turkeys frying Thursday morning. So anyway, no meeting next Thursday. Hopefully there will be sign-ups out very shortly for the bell ringing, and we'll be getting that lined up.
They're out.
They're out.
I didn't get it. Once again, you guys keep me off the list. So at any rate,
They went ahead and signed you up. You don't need to.
you already signed me up for the live slide. Great. I'm glad to hear it. Okay. Yes.
Yep. So thank you to those of y'all that have already signed up for the holiday party gathering on Wednesday the 11th. Just a reminder, that's going to take place of our meeting on that Thursday the 12th. So sign up. That's going to be at Guy and Carrie's house. So thank you again for opening up your doors. And this afternoon I will send out the RSVP for the Santa breakfast as well. One thing that I was just remembering last night was we need to get together the Santa picture, so I'll send out an informal email to some others to work on that as well. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, and bring presents. We're doing the Toys for Tots thing, so make sure you bring something for the Marines to collect. They'll be dispersing them in the community.
So Santa breakfast.
Santa breakfast, not my house.
I'll come on.
If you want to bring Guy a toy, that's okay too. Buster, you're just $50.
I want to ask that if you could resend the sign-up sheet for ringing of the bell. Several people at this table didn't get it, so if you could do that. Then I want to thank Steve Scott. He allowed me to install some carpet in his house.
Did you get the good stuff or the bad?
He got the good stuff.
All right.
missed y'all. It's been a few weeks since I've been able to get here. We've been busy. So, update, Rosa and Victoria. Rosa applied to 11 schools. The first 3 were yeses, so where she'll end up, I have no idea. Just a prayer for her to find peace in whatever the result is, based on what we can afford, because I think most of them were private and out of state. But I let her do her thing. And then Victoria, I'm gonna ask for a little prayer for her too. She was driving on 40, long story short, went into the guardrail with me in the car, going about 70, we're obviously fine, totaled the car. It was quite an experience. The airbag kind of pushed her up against the side as soon as we made contact, so she couldn't see as we spun around 40, and by the grace of God, if you're ever in doubt, just think about this story. I mean, we went across 4 lanes, we didn't hit anybody, nobody hit us, and we landed somewhat safely 5 feet from a wall off the side of the road. So we're grateful first. On a better note, the car was probably protected us too. It was so smashed. I'm not sure how. But anyway, on a better note, Victoria has a new love, and that is field hockey. And she got MVP 2 days ago at the banquet. So I was told she could get a scholarship for that. Thank you.
Oh, I got a good one here. So, got on the scales this morning. I'm down 20 pounds on the nose since 1st of September. And I have to thank Miss Lexi over here, because no matter what I order at Costa Billy's, it comes out salad with chicken on it. There you go. So, there you go, Buster. Everybody goes to the dermatologist and says, go ahead and freeze that thing off. I have a high threshold for pain. He's going to test you, baby. Let me tell you, it beats hell out of cancer. Last one for Gail. She used to be 6'2" before that accident.
Just writing on Cooper's statement, one thing I've always kind of bragged about Rotary is I feel like in a pinch I can pick up a phone and there's somebody in this room that can solve the problem. And by God, he did it instantly. And I'm so grateful for him and all the rest of you, just knowing that you're out there.
Ditto.
All right, so I've got a happy dollar 1 month from today. My son is getting married. And because of that, he cannot use his Carolina tickets this weekend. The game is at 3:30. They're playing Mercer. If anybody would like them, they're yours to take. So.
All right.
I got a happy $5.
Hold on, I think people should be a little more excited about free Carolina tickets. Let's get Buzz here, all right!
I got a happy $5. We've seen a lot of Katie this year, which we haven't seen her for 3 years. I don't think it's her love of family. It's just, I think that the joy of her roommates is worn off. So she came home and said she was applying to grad school, and she rattled off, like, I don't know, 12 schools, and like, wow, it's going to be interesting. And she came home the next week, she goes, I got in. I said, well, that's great. She says, can I not apply to all the others? I'm like, well, that's fine. I said, where are you going? She goes, back to Scotland. So Katie's going to Stirling next fall for a year of grad school over there. And then I want to do some accounting for you guys. We got all the numbers squared away at Pigstock and whatnot, and COV called me and said, we have completely funded our 25 girls for university for the next 3 years, so it's done. You guys started these young ladies when they're in the 6th grade. We graduated 75% of them onto university, the rest are in trade schools. 10% of children in Vietnam go to college. You guys got 75% of the poorest girls going to college, so thank you.
Double kudos this week to our own O. Henry Hotel, Tony, and to the Queensborough Bar Association. This is the year of the bicentennial of celebrating the establishment of our North Carolina Supreme Court. And as part of that, they have been touring the state and actually sitting and holding court in various venues around the state. And Monday they were here, and we had oral arguments at the old courthouse downtown Monday morning, and then we came here, and the O. Henry helped us host a luncheon for them, as well as a continuing education presentation during the afternoon, and you guys did a great job. So, good day for Greensboro.
This one's for Walt. I was contacted yesterday by Tony and asked to do the invocation, but I think that Walt felt called this morning, and
Tony, tell the story. Tell him.
All right, so I email out to Walt to remind him who's going to be doing the invocation each week. And in the subject line this time, instead of actually putting Howard's name, I put Walt's own name in the email. Sorry about that, Time for next week, no.
I'm on for next week.
I'm going to pay $1 for this. So today, if you looked at the football pool, Bentley's not on there. Is that a yay? Good thing? I don't know. However, the prior two teams that they played, the total they scored 108 points and held the other two teams scoreless. So then the rumor mill got started. And I heard through the grapevine that they were trying to get back-to-back games with Carolina, but Carolina found out they won by such good scores, they backed out.
Yeah. Well, you know, this time of year, you know, holidays, I think about what Grandpappy Lewis always used to tell me. He said, happiness is having a large, loving, caring, close-knit family in another city.
So I had a happy dollar, but knowing I had the floor, I put it in the cart fund bucket. So, I'm going to be sending out some requests. We're already picking board members for next year. So if you see my email, please don't disregard it. Just tell me no. Right? If you don't want to do it, say no. If you are interested, like if you're keen to volunteer, like I'm ripcord ready to be treasurer, go ahead and email me and let me know, and we'll put you in the hopper there for the selection. So I'm going to introduce our speaker now. Our speaker is Randolph Russell. He's an author of the book American History in No Time, and he has some books in the back. I'm sure he'll be willing to sign one and sell you one at the end. It's a quick and easy read for the basics. He has been welcomed by numerous audiences across the country, including Rotary clubs in Orlando, Atlanta, Kansas City, and Las Vegas. In addition to his expertise in history, the author is an accomplished musician who has performed in many European countries throughout the U.S. In business, he held a number of financial management positions with companies in Florida and Georgia. Russell holds degrees from the University of Miami and University of Florida. Welcome, Mr. Russell.
Thank you, Guy. It's a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate the invitation. My message today is about something that impacts nearly every challenge we face as a country, and something we all play a part in. After the Constitutional Convention adjourned in September of 1787, people in Philadelphia and around our young nation were anxious to know what had been decided. A woman came up to Benjamin Franklin and asked, "Well, doctor, what have we got, a republic or a monarchy?" He replied, "A republic, if you can keep it." Thomas Jefferson once said, "If a nation expects to be ignorant and free, it expects what never was and never will be." The founders believed that this nation would be preserved in liberty only if we as citizens understood its history, embraced its founding principles, and had an appreciation for the sacrifices made to secure the freedoms it affords. So, how are we doing? I'm sure all of you have seen videos of celebrities stopping people on the street and asking them things about our country that should be common knowledge. The responses can be funny, like the person who actually thought the First Amendment to the Constitution was "don't cheat on your wife." Or the guy who described Columbus as the man who came to America and ate Thanksgiving. On that same Columbus Day show, Jimmy Kimmel asked people if they could name the ships that sailed on Columbus's first voyage. Among the best answers were the Ninja, the Pina Colada, and the Santa Margarita. Now, if these were were just isolated instances of people on the fringe of society being put on the spot, we could simply laugh or feel embarrassed for the person and not give it another thought. But that's not what's going on. What's apparent in these anecdotes is confirmed in studies and surveys. The lack of knowledge is profound and widespread across all age groups and all academic levels. In the most recent testing of high school seniors by the U.S. Department of Education, only 12% were proficient in American history, far below the results in reading, math, or science, which seem to get more attention. The Intercollegiate Studies Institute gave a similar test to college seniors at 50 institutions around the country, including Harvard and Yale. They scored so poorly that the average grade was an F. Not surprisingly, things aren't any better among the general public. Last year, the Freedom Forum Institute published a survey which showed that only 1 out of 1,000 adults, our own age group, can name the 5 freedoms guaranteed by the First Amendment. Now, I could go on, but it's clear enough. Our connection to our heritage is fading. All of us would hate to lose our memory, and yet that's what's happening to us as a people. We are losing our collective national memory. Clearly, we are not keeping faith with the high standards the founders envisioned for us. Now, here are 4 reasons why we must fix this problem. First, it's part of our identity as Americans to know certain things about our country. We don't all need to be historians, but there's a general body of information, call it the basics or the essentials, that everyone should learn and never forget. It should be taught and rehearsed in our homes and our schools so that everyone knows the fundamentals, and it becomes a part of who we are, individually and collectively. Second, the problem is not just a matter of complacency. There are people who try to fill the void of ignorance with a distorted picture of this country and its founding. Some years ago, I had a conversation with such a person, a prominent tenured professor of American history at Boise State University in Idaho. He told me I was politically biased because I quoted from the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, both of which, according to him, are irrelevant today. Pretty shocking from a professor, right? Now, the third reason. If we had a different form of government, maybe it wouldn't matter so much. But in this country, we govern ourselves. Every 2 years, we elect people from among us to safeguard our liberties and maintain what President Lincoln called a government of, by, and for the people. Those who govern do so only with our consent. But here's the problem. According to a national survey, 2/3 of recent college graduates don't even know that congressional terms are 2 years in the House and 6 years in the Senate. Responding to those findings, New York Times columnist Frank Bruni wrote, quote, "You can't tell me that the quality of the men and women we send to Washington isn't affected by such profound and widespread ignorance about what they do there and how the system works," end quote. History can and should inform our decisions when we head to the polls. Knowing where we came from helps us evaluate the current direction of the country and measure how well our elected and appointed officials are doing. Patrick Henry said, "I know of no way of judging the future but by the past." Having an understanding of the past makes us better citizens and voters with a longer view. That alone is reason enough to become well-informed. But there's one more thing that should motivate us. The history of America is a fascinating story that can enrich our lives. The noted historian David McCullough said, "History encourages as nothing else does, a sense of proportion about life. Gives us a sense of the relative scale of our own brief time on earth and how valuable that is." He also said this, "The lessons of history are largely lessons in appreciation. Indifference to history is a form of ingratitude." Several years ago, I realized my children didn't know many things I assumed they had learned in school. And as I started taking a more active role in teaching them myself, I wondered, what are the fundamentals everyone, young and old, should know? And can they be learned quickly and easily? There was certainly no shortage of books on American history, but they were all several hundred pages long. What was missing was a short overview. And that's what I've done. American History in No Time lays out the basics in just a few hours. Even though it's short, only around 100 pages, nothing major has been left out from before Columbus all the way up to the present. The book has been used at a number of colleges, but it's easy for anyone to understand, including children. In tackling such a project, the first thing was to sift from our rich history just those basic essential things that all of us should know. Obviously, it's important to be familiar with the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, but we should also know near what major U.S. city you can find an ancient Native American pyramid with a larger footprint than any pyramid in Egypt. Why is our nation's capital called the District of Columbia? Which president acquired more territory for the U.S. than Thomas Jefferson did with the Louisiana Purchase? What killed nearly 200,000 Americans in just 1 month? How long did it take the stock market to recover its value lost in the Great Depression? Now, if you weren't quite sure about any of those, rest assured you're not alone. All of us need a refresher now and then. But I'm confident that most, if not all of us here, consider it a civic duty and even a family responsibility to be familiar enough with our nation's history to be able to pass it down to children, grandchildren, and others. The problem we face is that many of them don't think it's even important. You might not reach them if you were to present the subject just as an obligation. But young and old alike are drawn to a good story. Getting someone interested in knowing about our past should be no more difficult than getting them to go see a good movie. Because our history provides an unlimited supply of amazing stories. For example, what happened at the Battle of Long Island during the Revolutionary War and the unusually thick fog that rolled in and remained after sunrise, allowing George Washington and the Continental Army to escape from an overwhelming British Army and Navy, which to my mind was a miracle and evidence of God's hand in the founding of this country. Samuel B. Morse, a successful portrait painter, over 40 years old, when he saw an unfilled need, wasn't afraid to take a giant leap of faith and do something entirely different with his life by bringing the telegraph to America and much of the world. Women who persisted until they finally achieved universal voting rights 144 years after we declared independence. In World War II, Native American service members, mostly Navajos, being used to transmit secret military messages in their tribal languages, which neither the Japanese nor the Germans were ever able to figure out. Or the United States boldly aiming for the moon before we had even put an astronaut into orbit, to name just a few. But the ultimate goal is not just to know the stories, as important as that is, but to also grasp the principles behind those stories. It's important to know that the Declaration of Independence announced the birth of our nation. But it's more important to understand what it says, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's good to know how the government works, but it's better to understand why the founders were wary of centralized power and devised a system that would limit it. They knew human nature and knew there would always be some people in authority who would want to restrict the freedoms of others unnecessarily. The founders also knew that most people are basically good and exercise good judgment, which is why they instituted a radical concept, entrusting you and me with the ultimate control of the government. It's important to know about the wars this nation has fought. But it's more important to understand that freedom is worth fighting for, and even dying for, to preserve. Every citizen should feel a deep sense of gratitude for the men and women currently in uniform, and all veterans, especially those who gave their lives. In nearly all cases, they were young. They gave up their chance for a long life so you and I could live to be old and free. It's not enough to know that in less than 200 years, the United States became the wealthiest and most powerful nation in the world. We should also see that self-reliance, the Constitution, capitalism, ingenuity, sacrifice, hard work, and divine providence brought it about. And realize that when people are free, anything is possible. These principles and others found in our history can guide our personal lives and steer our country to an even brighter future. That's why this is so important. Knowing the history of America helps us understand those guiding principles. We see them personified in the men and women who went before us. Look, all of us want the people we care about to have a clear picture of the world we live in. We want them to know that life hasn't always been so comfortable or convenient or secure and won't stay that way on its own. We want them to be grateful for their circumstances and for all the people, present and past, who made it possible. In short, we want them to love this country. But just as with a person, you can't love what you don't know. I'll close with this thought. Previous generations have passed down to us a stable representative government, a large and productive economy, a beautiful land with natural resources in abundance and rich in variety, and a society with freedoms and a way of life that are the envy of many in the world. But there is evidence all around us that we are losing our sense of patriotism and our connection to our heritage. Whichever side of the political aisle you're on, we must never lose sight of the fact that we are all Americans. Being familiar with our common history and traditional values will help bind us together, even when we have disagreements. We need not wait for schools, the government, or anyone else to give us that connection to our past. We can learn the basics of our nation's history, what it really means to be an American, on our own, individually, in our families, and in organizations such as Rotary. And by so doing, we will preserve a free country for future generations and show our gratitude for the remarkable legacy we've inherited as citizens of the United States of America. Thank you. Now, it was mentioned that I was a professional musician when I was younger, so I'd like to close by playing something for you. I started doing this after I'd already given a number of speeches, and people seemed to like it, so I've been doing it ever since. But I have to confess, it's probably also a bit of insurance. I figure if the speech doesn't go well, I might be able to redeem myself. I also play the flute, and it'd probably make more sense to bring the flute because all you have to do is put the joints together and go. But with the saxophone, you have to contend with a reed. So let me see if this wants to vibrate. Okay. Here's what this is what I usually play. Yes, sir.
I get to ask it first because I'm the president.
Okay.
I've heard recently from a very unreliable source that you can actually graduate from high school in Guilford County Schools without taking a history course or an American history course. Is that true? Does anybody?
No, that's not true.
Fake news.
You have to take it in high school.
Yeah,
I heard
civics class.
I heard that only if you were in the honors or IB or whatever program you
Well,
had
they
to
are
take
in
history.
Well, I don't know. I'm from Georgia, so I'm not quite sure what the requirements are in North Carolina. But somebody actually said, told me at one of the speeches, I spoke in the Greensboro Rotary yesterday and in Cary the day before, and somebody said that North Carolina doesn't test.
Correct.
So maybe that's the difference. I don't know. But there are a number of states that have made passing the citizenship test that immigrants have to take as a requirement to get your high school diploma. It's a low bar. You know, the immigrants have from a list of 100 questions, they're given 10. They have to answer 6 correctly to obtain citizenship. So it's a low bar, but it's something, you know.
I wanted to see if you had any opinions on revisionist history, like the good or bad rewriting history, how that impacts us today. Like what's the impact on our youth and our children?
Well, that's so some books on American history have a slant for sure, and but that is not what I wanted to do. I have certain political views, but you wouldn't know them from reading the book. It's just about, and it wouldn't have been used in colleges if it had been politically biased. What I was interested in was writing a book of just stating what happened, and that's amazing enough that I don't think we need to revise it and let other people and you yourself decide, you know, what it all means, and who was right in a given situation and who was wrong. Should the U.S. have intervened? Should we have not intervened? I mean, those types of things. But it was important to me just to get down in a concise format and in a way that's easy to read what actually happened from before Columbus all the way up to the present. Yes. Who was next?
I like to point out that in North Carolina history books that Waller had when he was a senior in high school, there was a line in there about George Washington being inaugurated in the Federal Building in New York City, and that happened to turn into Wall Street, and that has been a black pall across the nation ever since because it embraced capitalism. And that's a direct quote. Well, George Washington was inaugurated, I believe, in 1776 or 1780. I'll have to ask our historian. Wall Street did not get started until 1896. So, I mean, not only is it a lie, but, and that's the history book.
Yeah, it's 1789, but the statue of George Washington that's there, you can go and stand right next to it in the spot where he took the oath of office. And that brings up another thing, is that you know, history is not like some museum we go see things from the past. It's all around us. And I like the quote by William Faulkner. He said, "The past is never dead. It's not even past." You know, how many people take their vacation to Orlando and to Disney World, and without realizing that just 2 hours away is the oldest European settlement in the continental United States, in St. Augustine? How many people go to New Orleans for Mardi Gras and don't stop at the corner of St. Louis and Charter Streets where slaves were auctioned before the Civil War? And so one of my hopes is that people who read the book, that it will give them a sense of history and a desire to know more. You know, and if that happens, you know, hopefully you'll stop at more of the historical markers we just blow past when we're on the highways. You know, but it's an important thing, and it gives us a richer life when we have that connection to our past. It helps us understand ourselves. Do we have how much time? Yeah. Okay. Yes, sir.
In your view, what's the single biggest event that's impacted our history today?
Well, I guess you would have to say the revolution, and if I and the Constitution, sometimes I'm asked, who would you say is the greatest American? And without hesitation, George Washington. We would not have a country, I believe, were it not for that one man. At least we wouldn't have gotten it when we did, and it probably wouldn't have looked the same. But there's the Washington Monument is the highest monument on the Mall in Washington, D.C., and for good reason. He stands supreme. We were fortunate to have such a man at the very beginning.
I have one more. I think it's important to know the 5 freedoms that you mentioned. I always preach this stuff in my youth. Would you mind mentioning them to our club, just so everybody can hear it?
Okay. What's the first one that's mentioned in the First Amendment?
Free speech.
No, that's in there, but the first one is religion. Okay, that Congress shall make no law on the respecting the establishment of religion and protect the free exercise of religion. So religion, and then, as you said, free speech. What's the third one?
Free assembly.
Press is next. And then the freedom to assemble peaceably. And the 5th one, nobody gets. It's the right to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So those are the 5. So now y'all will be more than the 1 out of 1,000 who can't answer that. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
One other duty for you. Please pull a ticket for me to march by.
Okay, over and over. 6292.
Try it.